people, he went up on that mountain and waited for the sun god. He captured him and then snared him and commanded him basically to go by slower in the sky during the day. So they made this agreement because he was about to kill him. But he said, I'll go by slower in the sky for you. Maui said, okay, for the people, you only need to do this half of the year. The second half of the year, you can go by as fast as you want to. This points out how the Hawaiians understood, and they put into their legends and stories, how they understood the rotations of planets, the times of sun during the year that you would have shorter days and longer days. They also would track things where they would recognize the eastern skies were facing this way, known as kahikina. Kahikina means the arrival. They knew that the earth was rotating, where other cultures thought the earth was at the center of the universe and everything's spinning around us. Like other earth-based cultures, they understood that same thing, like Aztecs, Native Americans. So looking in the eastern sky, kahikina means the arrival. When you would watch the night sky approach, this is where you would see all the constellations arrive. They also knew that they would arc overhead and set in the west, this direction. The western sky in the night, they would refer to that as komohana, where they recognize that as the entering. Just because you don't see it anymore doesn't mean it's not there. They knew it entered the next world you couldn't see. And they would track it as it came all the way back around, and this is how they had this awareness of east to west. They looked in the north. Anybody know what Polaris is? The North Star. Polaris, a pole, something you gravitate to. Their same name for that star was Hokupa'a, means the star that stays, the star you adhere to for navigation, to bear your north. So they understood these same things that other cultures knew, so this is where I want to kind of join in Hawaiians with other cultures, because some folks may not be familiar with them. So they're earth-based, like a lot of other cultures. And so that's why it's known as Haleakala. Haleakala there is the highest elevation on Maui. It stands at the summit, 10,023 feet. Haleakala means house of the sun, and that's where Maui trapped the sun and commanded the sun to reside longer in the day for the people. So that's why that is named that. And through my work, I learned a lot of things where I, for the longest time, knew that as Haleakala. It was established with that name when it was made a national park. The Hawaiians referred to that place as Ahelela, which is similar, where Ahele means to hinder or slow down the progression of or to ensnare. So they understood that this is where the progression of the sun would be slowed down, and maybe sometimes it would speed up. So that's in reference to what that meaning of that is. So that's the other larger volcano of Maui. And that is recognized as a dormant volcano, where the last time it had volcanic activity was approximately 120 years ago. That's in La Perouse. Any of you driven out to La Perouse, the lava fields? 220 years ago, approximately, that's where the last lava flow occurred. So as far as geology, that's it. I don't want to bore you too much. You can ask questions later. Then moving on quickly to plants. 3 different categories, making it simple. Anybody can figure out why we don't have things like bears, snakes, tigers, lions?
Isolation.
Very good. Very, very good. Isolation. Nothing can swim out here. So to give you an idea of how isolated the Hawaiian Islands are, they're approximately 2,400 miles from any near landmass. The closest swim for anybody, if you guys wanted to try, is from here to San Francisco, or vice versa. So to point out that native things here, as opposed to other things elsewhere in the world, are very unique because of our isolation. How did they get here? Native things were here before people. Now, there's a lot of other things introduced with different migrations, where the first people came from. I'm going to tell you guys about that. People wonder where these Hawaiians come from if you're so isolated, right? So to start off with, the very first things that were here before people. They somehow got brought out here with factors of nature. And it's a real simple thing. I laugh about this because I talk about it every day. Kids in Hawaii learn this subject in like 2nd or 3rd grade. The factors of nature that brought these things out here are 3 W's. They're wind, water, and wings. Super simple. In the case of wind, there's jet streams in the northern, over the northern hemisphere of the Pacific that can carry things over at least 2,000 miles. And there's also surface wind. Now, even if it's winds, it still can bring things, where like it can bring tiny seeds and tiny insects. An example of a tiny seed. You've never seen these before. Who knows what these are? Underneath here, all these little dotted things. You guys know what these are? They're like dust. On some of these other ferns, I'll show you, if you go to the backs of them, you'll feel they break off like little dust. Every single little speck of dust is a seed that can get drifted with this wind. Ferns can get drifted out here this way. Also, the tiny insects that got drifted over these jet streams and winds would be things like spiders, grasshoppers, dragonflies, fruit flies, and also one of the most unique moths in the world. If you guys want to get bored with that, we can talk about that too. So that's it as far as what things would get brought out with wind. And the factor of water, you guys can figure out things would get drifted in water. Now, not too many things can make it that way in salt water because salt water can rot things out. So the only things that would make it that way would be things that are already accustomed to salt, like beach plants, all right? And then also certain plants and trees have waxy covered seeds. And not here and now, but in Iao Valley, I'll show an example of something that's waxy covered that would help it last that journey. So that's another thing that would arrive. Another way things would arrive would be wings. That's the best way things arrived. What do wings mean? Birds, of course. The nearest migration distance for some of the birds that are here is from here to Tahiti and back. That's a little over 2,600 miles away. Some other birds fly further, where some go from here to Alaska and also here to Russia and back. And they can travel so far, and they also have stops, so you can figure out they eat things like seeds and berries and come out here and drop them. Also, in their feathers, they can have things like seeds, insects, and snails stuck on in them or whatever, and they can transport things this way. So that's keeping it simple. The native things, also recognized as indigenous in some other definitions, are the things that were first here brought with these factors of nature, brought here before human contact. So wind, water, wings. And to kind of explain how what makes them unique is that the way these islands were formed, they were formed over time. And as some things inhabited an island, as they moved over to another newly formed island, they evolved, where it's known as adaptive radiation, as they radiated or spread out all through these specks of Hawaiian islands coming from the South Pacific. So as they hopped from another, they adapted to a new species, and things here in Hawaii changed so much in isolation, where Hawaii is often recognized as the second Galapagos island if you're looking at evolution. And then moving on forward, so the things that were here before human contact, the native things. We have a lot of ferns and flowering plants. I won't bore you with that, there's too much. We have unique trees here, and I get to show you a native tree here and now. Now what makes the trees here in Hawaii unique is that they adapted to volcanic conditions. Volcanic conditions